We are live. Welcome to the Engineering Committee meeting for September 20th, 2023. Start the meeting at 4:30. Please stand for the pledge. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Both directors are present. Is there any changes to the agenda? If not, motion to approve.
Second.
Minutes of June 21st. I didn't hardly remember it. So if not, you have a motion to approve.
There's a public comment first.
Is there anybody on? Oh, Kathy Hoffman.
There's nobody else online, and one person.
Okay.
Is that Kathy Hoffman that's on? Okay. Kathy, do you want to make any public comment?
No, I'm good, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. So the minutes, I'll move the minutes.
Second.
That brings us to a West Day recharge study project, which there's a report in here, or at least a partial report, I guess.
Yes, this report was brought to the committee last year. Was an update on the recharge basin project. At the last engineering committee, we mentioned that we're going to bring it back as a attachment for a refresher for a new committee member, Rebecca. At the last board meeting, or two, there was a presentation by Tony Winkle that kind of dove into the project. This here is the report that kind of initiated the presentation and where we're at. Just an update on the project itself. The district was noticed, it's public noticed, the CEQA was for the project, so it's out. I think there's about a week before comments are due in for the CEQA study itself. So there's a few pages that were left out. Well, I'll tell you this: the attachments were left out here. There's a lot of information. It would have been about 200 pages.
Oh.
Yeah, so the appendices and attachments were kind of excluded. And it's the same packet that was provided to the committee last year. But if you would like, I know Mark would be really interested to see
do you
that.
just have a summary of, this report doesn't have even a depth to water in there. Did you get a static off of the wells? I assume you did, and whether you can use it. It should be fairly similar to, I think it's 8.
It is, what?
Yes.
Yeah, we had a number on where the static level was at that. And
It's
I
not
thought
in
it was
here.
in here.
No.
It's not in here?
Well, I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Without guessing what that is, I could bring it back.
Yeah, just look at it compared to well number 8, I think, and then maybe what's to the west. 6A and B, I guess?
No, that's.
6A and B would be to the south of this.
Yes. So
Southwest.
where you're like at.
South, almost due south of,
Almost due south?
correct.
Okay.
So
You have
11,
well,
12.
10, 11,
10,
12 would
12.
be to the north, and then 14 north by northwest.
Yeah, and 8 would be east, right?
Correct.
Anyways, and did the water quality, did it show any chromium-6 or anything?
I'm not sure the details on the test pumping on those two monitoring wells or what they pulled out for samples. If they were part of the attachments, I can get that information from the appendices.
Well, Table 6 is groundwater quality summary, but
Yeah.
I didn't see Table 6.
Yeah, so that was part of what was excluded in the packet from last
I
year.
was just wondering what the results were.
And we can get that.
Be
to you
interesting
next
to
week.
see.
With that, I have nothing more to add to the recharge study, unless there's any questions on what was provided.
Do you have any other questions about it?
No, I'm just writing down what you said about bringing back the water quality. But other than that, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. We have a question in the audience. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, well, can I get the appendices? Is it privileged?
Yeah, 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 we could do that. Yeah, it'll be part of the packet when provided at the next engineering committee meeting.
Oh, that's fine then.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on item 4?
Nope, still waiting.
So is Mojave, I had one other question I just remembered. So are they going to put some transducers in there?
I believe they're manually dipping them for now.
Well, yeah, I meant, do you know if they're going to put some transducers
I
eventually?
believe when speaking with Matt Johnson, he's the project coordinator now. He was talking about putting some transducers in there. Their transducers are always followed up by manual dipping. I believe it's quarterly, but we can find that out and bring that
Yeah,
back as
just,
well.
yeah, again, along with water levels, there weren't any in this abbreviation, and so be interesting to look at it compared to everything else. Okay, then let us move to item 5, discussion regarding the water system.
All right. First off, our pump and well services agreement. Well 1B failed after about 16 years of service, and that has come back online 100%. Happy to report for less than we had anticipated. We were able to reuse some components. Well 15 is in and around the 75 complete marker. Conduit has been going in yesterday and today. Chris and the guys have been out there working their tails off to get conduit for the electrical in. We're working with Edison. We contact them about every other day. The design's supposed to be finalized. The good news, that's going to come in significantly cheaper than we had thought. It's going to take 13 new poles to get 3-phase electrical out there. 12 of those 13 poles failed because they're existing, failed the Edison load calcs, so they get to replace those. It's looking like it's going to be 90% less than we thought. We budgeted about $250,000 to get electrical out to the site. Preliminarily, their best estimate so far is under $20,000. We don't have the final invoice in hand, so I don't want to get too optimistic just yet, but our project coordinator, Kevin, has assured us that it's looking really, really good. We plan on pouring concrete next Tuesday and Wednesday for the discharge piping out there. And then well 17 was finalized today. We're awaiting our sanitary survey and our SCADA panel, but other than that, that well's operational. Edison is meant to energize the panel. They're telling us towards the end of the month, so things are moving along pretty quick. Our 10-year tank rehabilitation and maintenance contract, we're just starting to get into this year's washouts. We haven't started any yet. We have our list off to Superior Tank for the 10 that we will be washing out, as well as the 3 that are in the contract for exterior coating. If memory serves me, Chris, that's 7B1, 7B2, and 3B? Okay, and 3B. Those will be the 3 exteriors receiving their paint job this year. Water quality, we are kind of with anticipating. Historically, we see from precipitation hexavalent chromium drop by about 1 part per billion, and that's kind of across the board. As Mark mentioned, water levels this year, we've seen a 5 to 6 foot increase just so far this year. We've seen static and pumping levels rise. Expect to see hexavalent chromium levels drop. Again, historically, we see about 1 part per billion starting about September, and that continues through about January. Really kind of trying to use that as an indicator marker from all the precipitation this year. And those sample results should be coming back, and they'll be in the next meeting's packet. Again, those water levels, we've seen a rise 5 to 6 foot. Some may be a little more, some may be a little less. It's just kind of a law of average. our service line replacement program. While we're continuing to replace services, we've replaced 24 calendar year to date and 11 fiscal year to date. Why is that number a little lesser than in years past? That's due to staff has been tasked with the remainder of the meter changeout program in-house, and that is down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the 7th bullet point under current projects. Of the 7,204 meters within the district, when this report was compiled, 5,638 of those had been replaced, put us around 78.5%. I just ran those numbers this week. That number's actually closer to 81, I think is 80.6. There is we're under 1,400 meters left to finish out the district. The guys meter read today, cycle 5 has 150 meters left. That cycle's completely done. Cycle 2, somewhere around 250. And then cycle 7 we'll focus on next. So I don't want to say winding down. We just got a delivery of about 485. That's the largest delivery we've seen in years. So the end is near. If
So
current,
it'd be less than 1,000 after that?
correct.
That's left?
We're averaging 350 a month. Hopefully we're under 1,000 after this coming month is very possible. If current trends continue, we were hoping to wrap it up by Christmas. It looks like it's going to be maybe January, February, and the meter changeout program will be complete. Everyone will have an AMI meter. Again, the benefits of the AMI, I don't really have anything bad to say other than receiving a lot of positive feedback. I'd love to see the customer engagement higher. Jen, we were at 1.4%. So tell your friends, tell your family, sign up. It's free. There's a lot of benefits in there, especially when it comes to like usage, bill parameters. We can set those now. So here in the next 6 months or so, every customer in the district will have that. And then maybe we can get a real aggressive campaign to get people signed up, because it really is beneficial. It's there for the customer as well as the district. Other repairs, replacements, updates. So Tropical Storm Hillary, that was fun. We had 6 main lines damaged, broken, multiple. We don't have a final count. I will bring a final count for the next meeting on how many mains were exposed. There was a total of 6 broken to various degrees. Over 20 that were either exposed, some with some significant portions. And we have several photos, just trying to give the committee and board an idea of kind of what we saw out there, starting on page 28. This is one over kind of Yucca Terrace, Avalon or Avenal? Avenal. So some of these we had to drop section in, as seen on page 28. Some damaged from folks. Again, I applaud everyone's initiative and effort. However, on page 29, this happened to be County of San Bernardino roads. This was up on Scenic. And this particular gentleman gave us a good chuckle because, in his words, he'd been grading that for 20 years. So we identified the source of the problem. You can see the roadbed on the left and right. And that's what happens when you remove 4 foot of material on the crest. He hit it right on the crest of the hill.
Yeah, there was nothing left there.
There's
The pipe.
nothing left there. So we partnered with the county, collaboration. They brought some material in. Again, not 5 feet of material. There's less than a foot of cover on that, but at least there's some cover now. Page 30, this is in the smoke tree wash. The smoke tree wash decided to get a little bigger, get a little wider. If we look at the top picture, that's a 45. Why is it 45 in the middle of the wash? It's not in the middle of the wash. The wash wall moved. Kim happens to be an expert on this section of wash. But if you can see the blue and AC pipe in the top picture, it's been repaired several times. So we're kind of looking at how can we engineer around the problem? We'll move those fittings back into the wall and hopefully never be out there again. Page 31 kind of just shows you a before and after. These were some of the exposed mains, so nothing broken. This was on Sundown, cross of Wilson Ranch. This was, if you look, the bottom picture, about 350 foot to the west, that's Wilson Ranch. If we remember years back when we brought in 3,800 ton of Class 2 base, I'm happy to report that that held up wonderful, better than I could have hoped. If you go out there now, is it smooth? No, there's those like washboard, you know, people do drive kind of quick on it, but the material stayed in place. So there's a couple little nuggets of material that washed up, but nothing, when you think of 3,800 tons, I mean, we had lines of dump trucks. Very, very, very minimal movement of that material. And again, that just kind of hammers home the point and validates that that methodology works, and that cost-saving measure to the district can and hopefully will be utilized in the future, that it's simply cheaper to bury it with Class 2 base by about 60% savings versus drop sectioning those mains deeper. And then the bottom picture is just, that's an after photo. When we're done, that's what it looks like. So kind of a before and after. Page 32, just a couple more of, the top one was in the La Mesa wash. If we remember back 6 years, we drop sectioned that main. So again, I ask, why is there a picture here? Because that wash saw that much water, and then there's a gentleman that decided to play dam builder in that wash. Oh, I don't know, what do you think, mile and a half south of that? That wash is now, another good couple of rains, going to be threatening some homes. So we're not stormwater division. We maintain our assets. We thought we did drop section this and hadn't had a problem for years, but that top picture is an indication of when people decide to go against Mother Nature and redirect stormwater flows, this can and is what happens, unfortunately. That bottom picture used to be a blow off. We were very lucky not to lose that section of main, because yes, it's dangling there. That's been backfilled. And then number 33, that's right here off of Sheep Creek, kind of adjacent to Nielsen there, kind of on the north side. Again, lucky to lose that. That was many, many hundreds of cubic yards of material. So we worked for many hours just bringing in material to, once again, cover up that asset. So
That's right up here, huh?
yes, sir. And then we've got some telecommunication lines. Yeah, that one was substantial on the amount of material that moved.
Yeah. How many, so you said 6 mains were?
Six main breaks.
How about service lines? Were there any service lines
There
included?
were. Most of them were just exposed and then reburied. I'll bring to the next meeting. We have Tony was nice enough to create us a hotspot map, as we call it. Hotspots is places that either main tapes exposed, water mains exposed, service laterals. So we have a map, and we'll include that in the next packet so you can kind of see that floodplain. And when it's on the map, it really, Tony did a great job creating this for us. It really shows that floodplain. Kind of picture Wilson Ranch down to about Wolf Tumbleweed, maybe a little past it. There's that flood channel that just cuts through there. We had multiple requests from people because they couldn't get out of their driveways, and unfortunately we can't assist in that, but it really moved just tremendous amounts of material. The county's still out working with West Coast Sand and Gravel. I don't know how much West Coast. I saw 3 different rigs out here today. A couple weeks ago there was upwards of 10 and 20, it seemed, a day. So it seems to be like a lot of government agencies working to kind of remedy that damage. We have 1 or 2 hot spots left that have just come in. And I do remember there's over 20 that since have been buried. So we definitely experienced some significant damage, as well as Booster A at 2A was taken out because of the storm. And when that occurred, it also fused the main breaker in the open position, unfortunately. So the crews worked through the night to restore power to the site to get it pumping again. So it's not just our distribution system that takes some brunt of the damage. Sometimes our electrical components do as well, which brings us into FEMA. We have worked with our Primus agency, so that'll be Division of Drinking Water District 13. We have the status of FEMA. We have created a project, so all time and materials are captured, and we will be submitting for reimbursement for FEMA funds for those damages incurred. So, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, because I know that's a lot. In it.
So you're generating a cost?
Yes, sir.
You've already done an analysis, or you've applied the damages to a map, active map, so you can see where the concentrations were?
Yes.
And then you're creating for FEMA, you're creating a cost. Yeah, because I was going to ask that you generate a cost so that we can have that in hand also for the district for, I mean, it's going to happen again.
The last figure
sometime.
we compiled as
So-
of this week, the district's incurred just shy of $24,000, and that covers staff time, overtime, double time, and materials, including clamps, flex couplings, pipe. And we do know there's more, so in working with our sanitary engineer, we have to submit a comprehensive plan because future projects may be compensable to the district. We're working with them to finalize a plan on, let's say, where the county hit our lineup on scenic. We know there's inadequate cover. It's because storm damage, so we're compiling and we're going to submit a plan to bring in material in the future and seek reimbursement for those costs, but it wouldn't be reimbursement, it'll be prepayment of those plans through this particular disaster through FEMA.
So I know the county is hauling stuff out of the Sheep Creek wash up there. They've been in there with a big bucket for quite a while hauling stuff out. And I noticed up on Phelan Road there were some gray. I was wondering if they were using that material down here.
They are.
Good, because that's pretty good material. It's almost like road base.
We've noticed that they are hauling in Class 2 base from Cal Portland Cement. There's a mixture of Class 2 base, earthen material, such from the Sheep Creek wash down here, and then from that gray
From up
rock.
at Wrightwood, they're cleaning out that, where was it Lone Pine Canyon?
Yes, sir.
They're cleaning that out, and it looked like they were putting some out in here, and that's pretty good material, so.
And it does look like they're kind of re-bowling the wash to try to help contain, hopefully, more.
Well, yeah, but I was gonna say, if they've got that material, we could use it.
They have assisted in a limited scope, and we can seek to get further assistance.
Okay. Very good. You have any questions or anything else? Is there anything else on that? Yes, you have a question.
I was just wondering if I could get more information on what the benefits of the new meters are for people who are looking at it. So I've heard some of it before. So I assume it provides real-time monitoring. So if I don't have a meter, but if I had a meter and then I signed up for the program, then what I would be able to monitor my meter real-time.
Yeah, it's a smart meter.
It's called advanced metering infrastructure. As far as if you logged in at 4:59 and hope to see 4:58's usage, it's not always in real time. They are programmed to phone home, if you will, 4 times a day.
Okay. Okay. So like 8 hours probably.
A little more than that. It's
12.
every 6th hour. It is meant to radio home and
Okay.
update those reads. We do have the capability to ping it. Customers don't have the ability to ping it. We do. So we can obtain data. So as it's 5 o'clock right now, most of the time we can do that. But as far as like data logs, so if a customer were to call in and we'd like to see yesterday's usage, or I noticed I have a leak, can we look and when did that occur? We have that capacity from the office to
Okay.
pull up those records in real time, if you will.
Right.
But real time, as far as seeing 5 minutes ago, not quite that fine tuned, but real time and seeing yesterday or the day prior, absolutely. Same with our customer-facing portal, and Jen can help me with this, but customers have the ability, much like other utilities, to go in there and set operating parameters. So operating parameters based upon consumption, or, and I believe they can go in and set numerical values on their bill. So like a do not exceed, or if I hit $100 worth, please notify me, and that can be done by text and or email.
Okay. So it would be a website that I would go check from my house, as well as then
Correct.
making those
If you go on our
adjustments?
website, there's instructions on how to set yourself up to receive those notifications, and you can also set up leak notifications. So, and again, these parameters are customizable for the customers. So various degrees of bill amounts, various degrees of water usage, or leaks. And you can set those parameters up to notify you by text or email. So if you have a leak, it'll text and email you.
And I don't need to be worried about the security of the data, it's safe?
Yeah, census, I don't know if you want to talk about the, whatchamacallit, the, not bandwidth that they use, the,
Oh, the data is transponded between the meter and the collection, our towers. That is a proprietary signal. We own that signal through the FCC. That's what makes our meter infrastructure unique. Not all meters are created equal. Certain meters run off cellular, certain meters run off radio networks, and I'm not encouraging or discouraging either technology. They both have some pros and cons. Some have greater pros. We elected to go with the one with greater pros. That signal is registered with the FCC. The district owns that signal. That data is housed by the company with proprietary safety measures. They handle that. We are DoD compliant, and what's in that, I am not your first and foremost expert in IT security. So I would have to get my consultants from the meter manufacturer, and I don't know how much of that they give out to keep it secure.
Right.
But the data is secure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's proprietary to the servers, and at that point, then it can be accessed by either district personnel, or when it's, if a client or if a meter owner wants to start accessing it, they can start accessing it through the district.
Correct.
All right, and it's that last part where we're trying to get people to sign up for
I very much
accessing
would
it through the
encourage-
district?
Yes. Some of the larger participation rates we saw, I believe was Glendora, and they were very
Glendora,
proud of, I
Laguna
think it was
Beach.
5%.
yeah.
And it's very unfortunate, especially when you receive phone calls from customers, well, I didn't know I had a leak. Well, we have the technology available to you that you can make yourself aware of the leak
Yeah.
within less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
By virtue of the portal that we now have for that customer-facing experience. It's really there for both the district and the customer. But the customer now has so much more capacity over an AMR system. AMR, basically once a month, somebody drives around, collects your read. Your data is
Right.
gathered once a month. Whereas AMI, that data is gathered, in theory, every 6th hour. They are programmed, and we can set the parameters. We can make them phone home more, if you will, but we don't. The manufacturer recommends the 4 times a day. We want to ensure longevity of these assets, so we're going to go with the manufacturer's recommendation. But again, you can be alerted to a leak as little as 6 hours from the moment it occurs if you access that customer-facing experience and portal that's available now.
Okay. I had one last question on it. So when it comes to, I think I got the acronyms right, the AMR systems, when you're measuring the meters at the end of the month, there can be this sort of asynchronous back and forth between, that shows up as water loss, right? Where you're like measuring production versus consumption, and you might not get the times 100% on all of it, right? So you could be missing some in your measurements, but the AMI, is that like just, you can just take a snapshot of the entire system and you know this is exactly what's happening right now, or is it trickier than that?
The fundamental methodology you just described is exactly what every district aspires to have. the greater reporting accuracy, yes. AMR, you're absolutely right between that correlation of reading time between well and meter. AMI helps narrow that band.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you.
So theoretically, the personnel at the district could get a 24-hour read of all of the meters and then look at the pumping during that period and what's in the tanks and come up with a pretty good water loss for the system.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And there's also components built into AMI systems that you can tether to your SCADA system. We haven't really explored that too deeply in the beginning. During our meter analysis and evaluation we did. Once the AMI system's completely online, we're hoping within the next 6 months or less, it will be very interesting to see that water loss, if you will, non-revenue water, what that number does, because that reading cycle, as Mr. Barnes alluded to, really does tighten up with the reads from the wells and the reads from the meters. And then conservation takes that one step further. You want to go into, I always botch the acronym, if you can help me with that. DM, I always,
Yeah.
is DMZ, DMA?
DMA.
Okay, DMZ is programmed in my mind, sorry. If you can help me out with DMA.
That's a demilitarized zone.
I know. Too much history studying.
District monitoring area is what they refer to.
District monitoring area.
And basically their theory there is with the AMI system, let's say you have 100 meters off of a zone break. The thought would be you put the master meter for that particular zone with those 100 meters. So you take your snapshot of
Yeah,
the
you can
metered
do
area
zones, yeah.
and then the 100 sub-meters, calculate the two and
Yeah.
gallon in, gallon out.
So you could see what parts of the district are inefficient.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Also, what, when we first talked about these years ago was that you could put, can't you put warnings in if, for instance, if there's some flow from 2 to 4 in the morning, that probably, or midnight to 4 in the morning or something, that might suggest that there might be a leak. If something that's continuing during the normal time when people are sleeping. And so if it's programmed in that there's alert that somebody in the district might see, then that might be, and you could see it over several days or a week or two, you'd be able to suggest to that meter owner that there might be a leak.
Is there time monikers in it?
It's not so much that as if there's continuous flow for a certain amount of time, that's what triggers a leak alert for us.
Okay,
And
so
then
well,
at
it's
that point-
basically, that's basically the same thing. I was just
Yeah.
suggesting that if there's flow at 2, 3, 4 in the morning for every day for a week, there's probably a leak.
Yeah, it's not really built in quite that way because people's water usage habits are different, you know.
I know they are, I'm just
Yeah.
suggesting that might indicate that there's a leak.
Right, yeah.
There's some other security measures built in that I'd rather not address in a public forum that are district-facing benefits, and I'm happy to answer those
Yeah,
another
no,
time.
I was
such
trying
as
to
tamper
give some
alarms.
examples of how, one of the reasons why we went with these types of readings, that trying to limit the leaks as much as possible too.
Yeah, and AMI really does. The
Well, you've got
capacity's
basically
amazing.
almost continuous readings, so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. And you are generating costs and a map, a hot map for the flooding that we had. And it would be really interesting because that flooding is, if there's another, 4 inches in a 2-day period, it's probably gonna be in the same
gonna see it
areas.
again.
So, because it was throughout the whole district, so. So that, when that, I know you're still working on it, but eventually I'd like to bring that map to the engineering and then look at it and maybe even bring it to the board meeting at some future date.
We can have it for you at the next meeting.
Well, if you're still working on projects, it's, that's fine, but I would like to see it, so.
Okay.
All right, any other items or discussion on item 5?
Nope.
No? Okay, let's move to item 6. Smithson Springs.
Other than the vegetation getting thick, the flows, we again continue recording. I don't have them with me today. We can bring those to the next meeting. I'm sure they've
I
ticked up
imagine it's really
significantly.
overgrown
It
this
is.
time.
It is really thick, and unfortunately, I can't. Getting CAL FIRE crews at the moment is really hit and miss, and just as everyone's noticed, the weeds around town are pretty thick. So we've been trying to. The days we can get CAL FIRE crews, we don't have them working up in Smith and Springs yet because we've been focusing on all of our potable sites. But as soon as we can get crews up there,
No
we'll get
problem.
it cleared out and restored.
No problem. Okay. Item 7, state regulations update. Anything new with the state?
Now just continuing ongoing implementation of their programs.
Okay. Item 8 is a GIS presentation.
Yes, I think this is a good opportunity to kind of showcase what the district is doing with our GIS data. Now, you also brought up a couple requests that we can show here online, here live with Tony. But the purpose to bring this to the committee is something that we're going to present to the board probably in the next couple of meetings. And just to give you a background of where we started and where we're at, we built our GIS from the ground up starting in 2010. And in 2016, after we did the migration to a working GIS, we sought a third party to host the data out to our field. Push the data out, get them the information, and collect data. 2012, the district brought on Tyler, who we use for our customer service application. At the time, in their presentation, they had discussed a GIS integration with Tyler. We've waited several years and we'd never seen anything materialize. As a matter of fact, they were asking the district staff, what is it that you want to see in a GIS? That kind of indicated that they didn't have anything in place. So we moved forward with CSD. You probably heard that term for the last several years is what we use out in the field. So the data has been pushed through CSD, data is collected, they have access to all of our assets, valve locations, meters, customer information. And we've been using that in the field for, well since 2006. It's grown from collecting data to a customer service integration with Tyler with the AMI, which is a connection to the data, pushing data into Tyler, but extracting all the data we want out of Tyler into our GIS. We brought in A11, and included in that CSD application was the hydraulic model. We use it more for fire flow testing. We no longer need to go out there and run a hydrant to get that fire flow for our customers. At times we do run it just to calibrate our model, our hydraulic model, which was calibrated back about 3 years ago, preparing for the water master plan. A couple of years ago, we received notice that CSD was sold to a bigger company, I guess you would call it, that they brought them on to push their application out to a bigger market. And they're out of Canada, so it was going to go out more than just California predominantly and other small little cities in the U.S. And we thought, well, that's great, as long as the surface is still there. It was probably, I don't know, earlier this year, we got word from this company that they were no longer going to support the Tyler integration. That they would support it in CSD, but if it broke, we would have to find a means to kind of go in there and fix it or make that connection. So that kind of left us in limbo because we really use the Tyler integration, that portion in our field for collecting data. So we explored options of what we can do to use another application or use it within our environment. In 2010, we entered into a small utility license agreement with Esri that opened up all the applications that they have to offer in collecting data, pushing data out using the enterprise. I have Tony here that'll kind of go through some of the examples of what we've done with enterprise, which we run internally, and also what CSD does for us. So I'll get Tony to kind of dive into some of the examples that we kind of deployed.
Yeah. Amy, can I share my screen? Yeah. And also to kind of make things more complicated, Sean, in the IT world, there's also a DMZ.
Isn't there a DMZ wrapper too?
There's TMZ on TV, isn't there?
What? Run DMC.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, let me walk over there.
So while they're trying to kind of get the connection going, talk about technology, we've been presenting at the Esri conference on what a small utility can do with and leverage the GIS with a small budget. So a lot that we've shared, especially for a CSD and the limitations that we have, that we've done a lot. And there are other bigger agencies, and I understand the struggle with bigger agencies to implement a GIS or a mobile because it's a big cost to them. But being small, you can kind of get in there and start somewhere. And we were fortunate enough with the support of the general manager and the board to do this. And the value that we get out of the GIS, today's world is all GIS. So the value that we get out of GIS in an analysis, Jen takes the data and she runs an analysis with operations in consumption or well production into customer service. So it touches almost every department in the district and it continues to grow. So I'll let Tony kind of take over.
Yeah, so we do have an enterprise license agreement with Esri, and that kind of opens the kingdom with all the apps and software that's available for us to use. We do have some in-house apps and solutions that we built along with Seru, which is our third-party application that a lot of our field guys use. So kind of want to talk about first our in-house stuff that we built in-house, mainly since I started. And at the end, I'll talk about Seru and what we do there a little bit. So just kind of a quick rundown. I have this video, but this is kind of our main homepage, our central nervous system in a way. Everything's hosted here. The first map is kind of just a general map of all our facilities of everything. We show parcels served in blue. We have high resolution imagery with all our assets. So the high resolution, so we'll see there the imagery is super high resolution. Staff can see hydrants, even the meter AMI antennas. We're able to see that to that resolution with this map. This is more of an internal map that staff use. I'll pan over here to our well 15 site and I'll kind of show that a little bit. And there we see well 15 up to date. This imagery does update about 3 times a year. And again, it's available on this map internally. A second solution, internal solution I want to share is this vehicle inspection that staff use to kind of track and put the inspection for the vehicles. This particular vehicle is a CARB compliant vehicle, so we can't drive it over 1,000 miles a year. So you see there I put the mileage and it says there's only X amount of miles remaining on that vehicle. And I could, you could kind of track what's missing and what's broken on there. Everything kind of goes home to this dashboard. So all the data, again, is not sitting in a file cabinet, but now is able to be displayed via dashboards. We can see stuff like odometers, which vehicles are up for replacement. all those vehicles with the CARB compliance, how close are they to reaching that compliance, along with gallons used? Because again, everything's being inputted into the system in the GIS. There we see we're able to kind of dissect the data as much as needed with this. We could separate in Class Bs, we could separate in divisions. So here we have some trucks that measure in hours, park vehicles, park fuel. We will trend all that stuff out. Instead of sending file cabinet, now it's being trended in the GIS. Again, another solution I want to share on here is more recently is this meter changeout, which is we just finished talking about. These are all the remaining meters. So AMR meters are symbolized in blue. Those are all the remaining AMR meters. Those red dots are the ones that are critical. So they've had some kind of issue during reads. So either they're not responding or there's a broken C or something. So staff is kind of prioritizing those to be replaced. So I kind of choose this meter as a test, which is our meter here in the office. It pre-populates a lot of information, again, limiting the amount of information that's being inputted. So we saw a lot of the account information, account meter information being pre-populated, again, trying to make things more efficient. And then we can also use this barcode reader. All new meters come with a barcode, so now you could just point your camera and it limits kind of user error in that sense. So these are all smart forms that are enabled through the GIS. And then to kind of, I think I have one more, and then it goes down to this dashboard again. So here I got a sample one of how the data looks like when it comes back to the office. So we see the existing meter number, all the pictures that were taken, before picture, after pictures, all that stuff, in case we need to go back and kind of see what was done in there. And then finally I want to talk about is, I think, Setter's coming up here. Yeah, so this is Setter. This is the application that kind of started it all. All the DIC tickets, so all the 811 locates are done through here. Hydrant maintenance, valve maintenance. This does hook up to a WOX machine, which is a valve turning machine. So kind of all that data goes from the machine to this application. And you're able to, again, see all the asset information. I'll click on our meter here in the office just for the test. And we do have that integration with service order. So here I'm clicking on the actual meter information, seeing the history of that service order that is tied to our billing information, which is over here in the office. So stuff is created in the office and then pushed out in the field through this application, completed in the field, and pushed back in the office automatically through that link. And this is the application that's being phased out, unfortunately. And I'll kind of let George, talk a little bit more about that, how it's going to be phased out.
Yeah, so the discussion with local water agencies was that the Tyler wasn't no longer going to be supported with Setter. We're not the only customers in the high desert that use the Setter. So at the conference in July, the ESRI conference, we were kind of looking for a solution. Like, how can we manage this in-house? There's a lot of other apps that we didn't get into, which Backflow and other that wasn't demonstrated in that video. But whenever there's a need out in the field, we highly ask that the field come and talk to GIS or the GIS department to develop a solution. And that has happened. So we're doing a lot in our environment at the office. The Setter, that was questionable. Well, not too long ago, Tony got word that Setter was disappearing. They were going off in the sunset, no longer being supported. So we scheduled a meeting with this company, and they informed us that after our contract on June 30th at 11:59, that the switch will be turned off, and that Setter will no longer be an option for us. The reason for that is there's cost to running this application, whether it's cloud space, aerial. There's a lot of components that make this application run, and costs have increased, and just trying to stay in the market and not, and compete with Esri, which there are entities that are using the applications and doing it themselves in-house, it wasn't cost effective. For us, we have gotten a sweet deal with Cetaru. The industry cost for an application is 4 to 5 times more than what we are paying now. Well, actually about 3-4 times more than what we're paying now. We looked into other vendors or other applications, and it wasn't cost effective. They weren't providing us enough of service. So it wasn't about 2 or 3 months ago, we had a presentation by Tyler. They got there. They have finally arrived with a solution for pushing their data out to field staff using GIS. We said we got to talk to them again to get more information on how it works with our GIS data. And that is a solution for us. There is some implementation costs and then a yearly cost. The yearly cost is half of what we do now with Cetaru. And just the implementation, there's the software cost, and then the integration is to making this work. This is something we're going to bring to the board for approval. And just to emphasize that the value that we get out of the mobile, the GIS, and collecting data and moving away from human error, paper, file cabinets, and doing more with the data is valuable for the district. I know it's not like I'm trying to talk you into it, because you see the value. I know Mark talks about waste management. What can we do with the GIS, you know? And anywhere and anything, we're like eager to find a way to incorporate that into our day-to-day. So we wanted to kind of just bring to you. I know it's probably been, I don't think you've ever seen what we've done in the GIS, whether it's through Cetaru and the Enterprise. Enterprise has been the last 4 years now. So kind of excited. This is what we do when we go out to conferences, is to showcase what we have done with us being a small district with a small budget. So just wanted to bring that to you as a presentation, and probably look forward to the next board meeting or so on a proposal and a recommendation. So.
Yeah, I was, when we were working on this, now this was a couple years ago when I was on the waste committee, but I was going, why can't our system just plot all of the, you know, we have the meters, we have all the lots, why can't we just plug in who's, you know, the routes that they use, and who's, you know, who's picking up garbage, and who's, you know, who has garbage service and who doesn't. Well, we can't do it because it's, yeah, and I was really surprised that you just couldn't just plug it in. I mean, you know, it's not like we have 50,000 you know, different separate customers. It's several thousand. So it seems to me that over, you know, a few months period, it could have been just plugged in. We could just had a map, a layer built into the system. So, but that's coming about now, I believe.
We'd like to highlight one point. Tony's going to pull up our hotspot map right now. Yeah. Just in conversation 10 minutes ago, this data is accessible at our fingertips. Tony, if you'd be so kind. And as George mentioned, the collaboration between field and GIS, inseparable. It really makes us that much more efficient to an exponential factor.
Can you guys see the colors okay? I don't know if the contrast is a little high, but black are the ones that are yet to be completed. I'll let it zoom. And then green are the ones that have been completed. So I don't know if you can kind of see the trend there. There's a little trend going up, starting from the south, going north. So I think that's the trend that Sean was talking about.
Yeah, you can see it definitely on there in a certain area, in certain areas.
And it's the utilization of the data that's hosted by GIS to give us these visuals, and it allows us to respond faster and more efficient with our equipment.
Yeah, this stuff used to be all done by hand, and then, of course, after it was done, you could look at the map and see, oh, well, here's the washes that have the issues. But now you can, all the different departments can access this, so that's the benefit of this. And that was one of my questions was, how often is this accessed by the different departments of the district? I mean,
Well, initially, when we rolled this out in Setaru, field staff, they were 100% in. That was their tool. There were some growing pains in the introduction of an application. It took a little bit to get our office staff to kind of use the tool instead of going through these map books that would be in one of our, customer service office would be stack of map books, APM map books showing parcels that are being served.
it's all on there now.
It took
You just have to access the right layer.
It just took one office employee to jump in there to say, wow, this is amazing, to see everybody else utilize the tool. So now-
And field staff, they have tablets, so they could access this, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only does field staff have access or office staff, but also the public. If you go into our website, we have a portal where they can access information, our GIS information. We have discussed deploying a leak app.
That's what I was just going to ask. In my mind, I was going, does the field guy that goes out and finds a leak, does he immediately can access it and plug in where that leak is?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So now we're going to kind of push this out for the public because we do get calls, there's a leak on whatever street. So if we can kind of get the word out that there's an application where it's simple 2 buttons and report a leak, then we know where it's at, what time, and they'll take a picture of it as well. So we're working on that. There's a lot of other services that we have in mind that we want to get out. It's going to grow and grow into what else can we do. So that's pretty much the nut and butter, or whatever the term might be.
Nut and butter?
On a GIS, but,
Is that like peanut butter, or is it like?
maybe the
and
meat and
potatoes.
potatoes, yeah. Oh, nut and yeah, that's it. Nut and bolts. nut
Nuts and
butter.
bolts of
That's
the,
it.
it's not bubble gum and baling wire, it's nuts and
That's
bolts.
what's close, so. Yeah, I'm so we're happy to kind of demonstrate what we've been doing.
I mean, you have brought different, you had a presentation, I don't know, a year or two ago, you showed the different layers, the different layers. They're layers within the model. They're actually the different maps that you can access, so.
Yeah. The one other, with Federal disappearing, and the plan was to integrate SCADA in with operations and the hydraulic model to get a real-time movement of water. It was a few years ago that we expanded our hydraulic model to extended period simulation. So then we can see over a 24-hour period what water does during the day. And this was part of the discussion on, when we had planned for the chromium-6 mitigation project, was to get that model in play. So when we interconnected those wells up south or up north, interconnected to our system, that we can see how that water plays out in our district in, we call it July or August, which is our peak season. So the hydraulic model is a big key in what we do. SCADA is another big key in operations. So we're getting smarter. And DMAs is another component that'll be connected into what we provide information and tightening down on water loss.
Yeah, that was a big push years ago when we had to come up with something. We had a blending program, because we didn't want to do wellhead treatment. But we came up with a better solution, so. But we worked on, they were developing a model so that we could blend it and get that approved by the state. So anyways, Any other questions or comments?
Well, thank you. I know it was a lot to absorb in 10, 15 minutes, but
Thank you for the presentation. If there's no more discussion, then move to item 9, which is review of current projects.
We kind of briefly touched on the status of well 15. Again, the conduit, Chris and the guys are putting in yesterday, today. We seek to have concrete poured next week. We have the discharge spools built. We'll be in there the week after, actually building the discharge. Our pump and motor should be in the next four weeks or so.
Are you going to put a house or just one of those sheds?
Shed,
Shed?
rather large shed to house the variable frequency drive, the motor control center. We seek to have that thing spinning by Christmas. That's our goal, we'd really like to have that online. It might be a little ambitious. Edison has promised me they can energize late November. So we're really pushing to have that online by Christmas. Don't see any hiccups with having that by next summer. Well 17, electrical was completed today. We should be having our sanitary survey here in the next couple of weeks, and a permit amendment to shortly follow after that. So in the next couple of weeks, that should be done. And then George, you want to take 6A?
yep. We are in the preliminary design for 6A-2. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. The CEQA is in process as we speak, and we'll be moving forward with the consultant to kind of get on with the soil investigation. We're getting some costs for that.
Can you remind everybody where that is?
The proposed tank is up at 6A, which is straight south on Sheep Creek Road, up on the hill.
Above the high school?
Above the high school, yes. We're proposing a 1.5 million gallon tank. We acquired I think it was 1 acre or 1.5 acres to the 6A site for this tank. There's already a pad for a tank, a pad for accommodating that tank, but there's a lot of soils investigations and make sure that,
It's stable.
it's stable, yes. It's stable. That pad's been cut out there for a few decades.
Yeah.
So there's some work to be done.
There wasn't any damage to the material during this last rain and everything?
Wash away?
Wash away or anything?
No. There's some vegetation that helps hold everything in place, and the slope on it's not too aggressive up there.
Yeah. Considering that hasn't been touched for 30-some years, it's held up.
Pretty
So
solid.
there'll be some hardening.
We may need some reinforcing.
Yes,
Certain
absolutely.
areas.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been up there, so, yeah.
Yeah, so storage is the key, especially in that zone. It'll help. I know several years ago, or maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Edison had their shutdown to harden the system, and we struggled with storage. So this is going to help a lot. Pumping water up to the tank and have it available for outages or future fires or anything like that may happen, that Edison will come in with their PSPs.
PSPS. And Mark, and as you mentioned in the past, looking at time of use. Right now, that's not always or ever a possibility for us. With basically tripling our storage capacity at the top of the hill, we can very much look at utilizing time of use rates, pumping off peak. So it's cheaper power, it's more efficient power, and it's cleaner power. Power runs on 60 hertz. Well, in the summertime, that gets real ugly. It's not 60 hertz, I promise.
It's less.
Yeah,
And
especially
that
out
drags
here.
on motors.
Out this way, we're the end of 3 legs, and we see some really just ugly, ugly power. Like we mentioned, that last storm wiped out one of our boosters, and luckily through, and the board has allowed operations, and I'd like to thank the board. We don't have spares for everything, but we do have some spares for some things, and we were able to utilize one of our spare motors. It was a direct swap, took 3 hours to swap out, and we were able to get that done same week. So it's nice when you have the spare parts available.
That's all I got for tank 6A2.
Anything, any other comments, discussions? Yes?
Just on that power stuff you were talking about, the solar project that CSD has, that doesn't provide power, right? That's just selling back power? Or is that something you can use in an emergency to power stuff?
The district entered into an RESBCT program with Edison, so really we're earning bill credits.
Yeah, it just feeds back to Edison, and then
all right.
we
And-
still have to use Edison
Gotcha.
because it's distributed around.
Gotcha.
We don't have a distribution line for the solar plant. It's all Edison stuff, unfortunately, but, all right. That brings us to item 10, staff reports. Everything's in here.
We have nothing further to report. Happy to answer any questions.
No, I know our fill station's making money, so that was a good project.
Yeah, so I started including snapshots of year-to-date and monthly, just
Yeah.
so the committee and board can kind of see. And it did peak over, I looked today, we're over 70,000 in revenue for the year-to-date as of today.
And that was, I don't remember, 35,000?
65?
65,000 to have it installed?
Yeah, we did install that in-house. The materials and the purchase of the unit itself, we were all in at right about 65. And then Lori and I'll,
So it pays
I would have
itself
to-
back every year?
I would defer you to Miss Lawrence for that. Her figures and mine, where the red and the black meet might not necessarily match up, so I would defer to
Yeah.
the financial expert for that.
And you haven't had any more problems with them stealing your hoses?
No, they break
People
our
haven't
still
felt,
doing
fall-
that?
They-
no falling off trucks anymore and,
No, luckily that particular vendor, I don't believe services this area anymore, the one that had a big issue. We actually welded the fittings on, so there's no more manipulating what's there. But as far as getting our hoses broken, no, that still happens. It's pretty amazing. The quantity of empty alcohol containers out there is pretty impressive.
It's a Friday night activity, or?
I watched one gentleman pull off with a tote in the bed of his truck, and I guess he didn't believe in strapping things down, and 250 gallons came out pretty quick.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but it is utilized. That thing has actuated gin. It's over 7,500 times since we built it, right? And just for the committee, it's, I think, 2 years and 1 or 2 months old. It's hasn't been online all that often, so 7,500 uses and counting in 2 years is pretty impressive. There's a lot of folks that have come to utilize that thing pretty heavily.
Nice. On page 26, the replace registers not sending signal, can you explain that to me, so I know
Sure.
what that means?
That service line, line item is our current Hersey meter population. That signifies when it's not sending signal, that means basically it's a dead register. Even further in, it's a dead capacitor, and then further in again, it's the battery is dead in it and it's no longer working. So it failed to send a signal. That map we saw that Tony was kind enough to bring up that had the red dots
Yeah.
and the black dots.
Yeah.
The red dots mean it's got a dead register, so we
Okay.
prioritize the dead registers or registers not sending signal because that meter is not functioning. It's still recording, so I want to be very clear on the meter still works. It just doesn't send our equipment, so when we drive by with the equipment, we don't receive the signal, so we have to manually get out and read it.
They have to read it.
So we prioritize those for the meter changeouts. We've known about the issue, we know about it, and we're remedying it with the new AMIs. So those get priority over, let's say, one down the street that's still functioning. And again, there's less than 1,400 of those in the district. And I happen to have the figure on how many are failing per month, and it's not very pleasant. It's roughly 20% month over month of the existing Hersey population. So I'm not slandering anyone. I'm merely giving fact of how many are failing per month, and Hersey seeing a 20% plus fail rate of the existing meters in our ground.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on staff report? Any other comments, questions? Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, going back to what we were talking about with the power, is there somewhere that public can access like a plan that CSD has for, say, an extensive power outage? I mean, I would assume this is something that's been thought about, right? If the power, you need power to run the wells.
Yeah, we have a bunch of generators that we have,
It's all-
plugins built into the critical areas, and we have how many do we have now? 7?
So we field 4 generators. We have rental agreements with a couple rental yards around. We have switchgear at all but 2 of our sites now. So switchgear means plugins
Okay.
that we're able to basically transfer, and they're called manual transfer switches between Edison to our generators for staff safety. So it's not hot wiring anything. It's
Okay.
all color coded, plug and play, and then in their exterior switches. And we do have documents, as you're alluding to, plans. Yes, it's our emergency notification plan, but not necessarily accessible to the public, and that's for several reasons.
Okay.
That's for staff safety as well, and that has some very sensitive information in it in operations. Certainly, some sites are more critical than others. Also, valving and how these instruments and pieces of machinery work that is not for public consumption. That is
Sure.
for district staff to utilize some of the most sensitive components of the distribution system.
Okay, so, but mainly generators are the plan?
Yes, sir.
If there's an extended power outage?
100%. If there's an extensive power outage, we would rely on, there's 2 forms to power generation. Ours is mobile, which means they're on trailers. There's also some districts use on-site power generation, which means you've got enough money to buy a generator, plop it down, and it belongs to that site only. We don't necessarily have that resource yet. Ours are all mobile, and we do have 4 mobile generators that we can utilize at various sites, and they're all color-coded. They work on cam locks. So
So 4 would power 4 wells?
no, that's not necessarily. It's all kilowatt based. So
Okay.
our generators are capable of X kilowatt. Some sites use less kilowatts. Some sites use larger. We do have one larger generator that's capable of powering an entire site. So that might be 2 or 3 wells plus a booster station.
Okay.
And then we have 3 smaller generators that are capable of a well or 2 or a well and a booster station. So incorporated into that document you're referring to is many sites' power consumption in kilowatt terms. So staff would match up the kilowatt draw to the kilowatt output of those generators. So, and again, that's not necessarily information that we want made available, because that
Sure.
could be used
Sure.
by people seeking to do nefarious things. So
How long would a power outage need to take place to start to cause problems with generating
that is
water?
a dynamic question. Every power outage causes problems. Degree of magnitude.
Right.
So when a water district loses power, a water district relies on its storage capacity, and that's why storage is so
Right.
important. If we play the law of average, if you're saying, how long could the district float on a power outage?
Yeah.
That's why we have emergency generators. We don't sit idly by.
Right.
we take emergencies into our own hands. That's why the district and board, and credit to the board, have allowed operations staff to equip every site that is critical. And as George mentioned, power safety, power shutoff, PSPS, Edison, that was in response to some of the wildfire and litigation between the state and power utilities. I'm not going to get into any of that, but this is what impacts the district, and the board has been generous enough to allow operations to equip every site that is affected by PSPS to have transfer switches, and we have adequate power generation capabilities. And if we were to experience a prolonged power outage, we'll rent the necessary generators. We also have fuel transportation capacities and arrangements with our fuel providing vendors. And our current generators, and again, there's some factors in there, depending on load, depending on elevation, our generators can run over 24 hours on tank of fuel.
Okay.
So the critical areas are up against the foothills.
Okay.
So those accounts are on that PSPS program. Most of our wells are up north or down north.
Right.
Down south, down north.
Yeah.
But it's getting water up the hills, up the mountains,
Yeah.
the gravity flow. But with the PSP, we got hit hard a few years ago. The perfect storm for power outages during the summer, right?
Right.
Peak season, pumping, and you have no power. So those are scheduled through Edison. They'll shut down, they'll notify us, and they'll shut her down. The ones that are not controlled or active
Right.
nature, whatever that might be, that's a different story. Then that could hit down south or up north, or down south and up north. Yeah,
Up south and down north.
that's it. Yes. So.
Yeah, I think most of where my thinking has been, and this is not related to here, I just think a lot about what if San Andreas went off and it was near us and it caused sort of damage all around, so it's difficult to even
Well,
get.
damage is different than just losing power. So
Sure.
losing power, we could probably get by for we'd have to alert everybody not to use excess water, but we could probably get by for a while. But if there's a major quake and there are lines that are broken, or, if the ground moves a lot, the water in the tanks slosh, and I've seen some tanks ripped out
Right.
because of it. So that's a different scenario.
Right.
And
Yeah,
there's
so I'm
also-
just thinking like if there's a large enough catastrophe that it's a problem getting those extra generators in, but infrastructure's still there.
We
to
have
pump.
enough, we have enough to get by
To survive for a
At
while.
least get by, yeah.
Okay.
So we've been
Cal-
working on this for, I don't know, 12 years probably.
Yeah, and Cal OES also has agreements with agencies such as ourselves are members of different organizations that we can inter-transfer resources if needed, if there was an emergency of the magnitude you're speaking about. So member agencies up north might not be impacted as great. They can transfer those assets down here, and likewise, if something were to
Okay.
impact up there. And that's the benefit to being member agencies on some of these different emergency response groups, and we are members. That possibility is always there too.
Cool.
Like how fire departments
Sure. Yeah.
rally to a fire, that's-
No, I appreciate that. It wasn't like I'm not trying to be accusatory. I'm just trying to understand
No,
what
it's
the
something we've
situation is
been
like.
working on for a long time.
Yeah.
First thing we had to do was to get, we said, well, we need some generators, but we had to equip all of the sites with the plug-ins so that somebody doesn't have to go out there and have to try to hook up hot wire into a panel. So that was one of the first things we started working on a long time ago, so that we could just pull up a generator and plug it in really quickly and get going, so. All right. Okay, I guess that would be now 11, review of action items. Did we have any prior meeting?
Nothing prior meeting, I think. Actually, let me check. There was hydrographs and a presentation on Chromium 6 to the board in October. I'm not sure if those have been taken care of.
No, we'll make sure and bring the graphs next meeting.
Yeah, I saw the hydrographs.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, we got them emailed too, right?
We didn't have the meeting, but I saw the packet. And then the chromium-6, I don't know what we were going to do. I don't remember.
In anticipation of the precipitation, reducing the hexachrome levels.
Oh, that was, yeah,
So
yeah.
the samples,
Because I knew it was going to dilute the the concentrations in the wells, and when the shallow water, which is the most permeable zones, fill up, the wells, the pumps take more from the upper section as it fills in, and less from the lower section. So I wanted to just see if there was any fluctuations in that. Okay, and then current meeting, just the.
The comparison for the static level for the monitoring wells, is that correct?
Yeah, just review of those new monitoring wells, and then the
water.
hot map, maybe a little more detail than, I couldn't really see it, but
Yeah, the
bring
internet-
that back sometime.
Yeah, the internet was a little slow to kind of get that onto our Zoom thing here, so definitely.
Amy, we've got the hotspot map. We've got the MWA monitoring wells depth to water, water quality, and drill logs. Smith and Spring flows, hydrographs, and chromium-6 presentation in October.
So just a couple things.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
We'll be busy.
Okay. Any change, setting the agenda for the next meeting is October 18th, and it's at 4:30 again, correct? It will be at 4:30 instead of 4?
Yes, that's the new time.
We can remove agenda item 8. That was the GIS presentation.
8, that was for the presentation, right. So we can remove item 8. Okay, anything else? Any other comments? Kathy Hoffman, are you still there? Do you have any comments or questions?
No comments or questions besides good job as always.
All right. With that, we will adjourn at 5:52. This one's right. Thank